Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of Dynamics Fortnite Fridays.
Good morning, Bart. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. How are things in Houston?
They're hot, it's about to hit 90, so it's not good.
That sounds a little more summery than springy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
We had a pretty nice spring-like week here in Minnesota and had a big thunderstorm just roll through, and now it's supposed to get down into the below freezing temps again overnight. So we had a nice little run. We're back to back to early spring now.
Yeah.
Anyway. Well, what do you have for a fun joke for me today?
So, in honor of Easter, I have a really good dad joke. What do you
Oh,
call a group of rabbits hopping away from you?
don't have it. What is it?
A receding hairline.
A receding hairline. All right. Well, since we just passed the 15th a couple of days ago, I decided to go with a theme around having to pay taxes. And mine is a little bit more, yeah, it's a good pun, I guess. So, why is Sherlock Holmes the kind of accountant that you would want to have?
Hmm, I don't know.
He's the master of deduction. Okay. Well, here we go. Let's uh,
That's
let's
great.
kick off a little power platform goodness. So, when I start looking at the show notes, we are going to jump in first with a little advertisement for the Agent Academy. So, the Agent Academy is a great collective of kind of easy to walk through scenarios that you do yourself to build some things in Copilot Studio. And there's a recruit module, and there's an operative module, and they're about to build a commander module, and they've got these other special ops, kind of unique things that are kind of one-offs. And so if you're learning Copilot Studio, I highly recommend jumping into Agent Academy and learning some cool things. For all of you admins who do a lot of things in the Power Platform Admin Center, alerts can be a huge help. That always, in the way things have pretty much worked in the past, you kind of had a great place you could go and you could find things if you were willing to dig, but you didn't have a great way to just get alerted if you wanted to be alerted if something crossed a threshold or if something happened, unless you went and built Power Automate in order to watch for it. Well, alerts are now generally available. We've got a bunch of them that are pre-built that you can just turn on. And then there are a bunch of other things that you can go in and put alerts on. And you can make that sort of at the environment level or at the kind of app or flow or whatever level, that lots of different things you could go do in this alerting mode to try to make sure that you are able to pay attention in more real time. It's not instant on the way these alerts work. They're asynchronous for sure, and sometimes they take several hours before they'll even kick off, but it's still great that you don't have to figure out how to go find something, that it will in fact alert you. So pay attention and use them if they're going to help you do a better job of securing and monitoring and um, governing your environment. People who are building Copilot Studio agents and deploying to teams need to read this article. It is a fantastic, in-depth article about all of the nuances that happen when an agent sits in teams that are different than you're going to see in the test harness or even in Copilot Studio or probably even on a website, that Teams behaves differently because of the other infrastructure around it and the way Teams has persistent conversations and some other things like that. So great read for people ready to deploy agents to teams. And then, depending on, it doesn't really matter whether you're deploying to Teams or Copilot or other places, that as you are doing ALM on an agent and moving from dev to test to QA to prod or however many levels you've got in your pipeline of uh, environments to move things through, that there are a lot of places that you can have some gotchas. And this is a great compilation of how to think about making sure that you're doing all the right things in that ALM path to be successful. So lots of options. explored here and pros and cons explored of what the kind of different options will give you for advantages and disadvantages. So pay attention, and it will hopefully help a lot of you do a better job and make it easier to get these agents deployed in an ALM scenario. For you makers out there who would like to be able to use some code first skills like Claude Code or GitHub Copilot, GitHub Actions, not Actions, GitHub CLI to work with Canvas apps, that you can now download those skills, get the plugin, and use your favorite code first way to work with the Canvas app experience to make Canvas apps either better or even just construct some things kind of net new. So pretty cool. Canvas apps can now work in VS Code. Same thing with Power Pages. I'm not even going to click into it. There's a lot of different things that the Power Pages Code Tools extension and skills will help you with. So pay attention to that one as well. The April feature summary is worth taking a quick look at. We've covered several of these, but I'm just going to quickly stroll through. So this one I hadn't seen anywhere other than this, because I don't know where it got announced, but we now are generally available with putting custom themes on the new modern experience for your model-driven apps. So if you would like to put your brand's colors and your brand's logo and make sure that you've got the right colorations for various ways that things show up on different parts of the views and forms, that you have the ability to go in and do all that in the Fluent 2 design system across the model-driven apps. So those include all the dynamics ones, of course. Also, I think we talked about this, or at least I put a little post on it last show, that you can now expose forms and views in the Copilot experience from your model-driven apps, including your Dynamics ones. So that's there, and then like a screen like you're seeing up here is actually more of a kind of code piece, and that one is in preview only. That one, I'm not even sure you can do that piece yet, but you can certainly show the views and the forms of your model-driven apps in the Copilot experience, so that as you're working in Copilot and having it do things, you can just bring up those assets to work or see as you're working. If you are looking for the Power Apps mobile experience and want to kind of hand edit the Fetch XML to make sure that your queries for all the offline sync capabilities are as efficient as you can make them to bring only the needed data down, then as a kind of more power hungry person who understands how to edit Fetch XML, we now have an editor built right in that allows you to just go edit that profile and change whatever you want kind of inline. On Canvas apps, the text inline control allows you to click on it and do things in the editor without, a much more streamlined experience. Anybody who has worked with text fields in the Copilot, or I'm sorry, not the Copilot, in the Canvas app Maker portal knows the pain point there, and I'm glad that we have done something to make this much quicker, because it was always a pain to have to put it into play mode to be able to do anything with the text and vice versa. So anyway, this is just another hint on the thing I just talked about with Canvas apps in your coding tools. There's also a Canvas authoring MCP server that's part of that gives the help along with the skills to make sure that your coding tool can do things effectively. In the managed platform, the alerting that I just talked about earlier is part of there, and then there's all kinds of new stuff on learn.microsoft.com. So wanted to quickly run through all of those things that came out. Most of it was actually in March, but this is the April feature summary. For this quick romp through agents and workflows, it's honestly just saying that we now have released the right connector infrastructure and nodes in both agent flows and Power Automate to allow you to call a Copilot Studio full-blown agent within an execution. So you've always, I shouldn't say always, for a while you've been able to call a prompt in there and just execute a prompt in line in an agent flow or Copilot Studio agent and be able to execute that AI that you could do within a prompt kind of as it executed. But you didn't really have a great way to say, at this point, what I want to do is pass a payload because we've reached the step of my deterministic process into a full-blown Copilot Studio agent that might even have other agents and all of the business logic and knowledge and everything that that agent has access to go do stuff. And then it could even hand a payload back to your workflow and continue to execute. If you want to have deterministic stuff be sort of the primary execution path. And then you've had for a long time the ability within an agent to be able to, as a tool, call an agent flow or a Power Automate flow to run things as well. So being able to use kind of that inception scenario of where do I want agents to be and where do I want deterministic logic to be and have full creativity to have interplay between them is what this is highlighting. For agents, there are specific things that are different about deploying an agent than deploying an app or even just a kind of Power Automate type capability or even a website. So Hamish put a really nice treatise here together about what's different and how you need to think about things, what you've got to test for, all the various kind of security things. It's a great read, so I thought I would just give you a link to that. This is a fantastic tool for anyone who is trying to have multi-person teams editing Canvas apps and the pain that goes along with if you do have two different people who are editing them in kind of in their own sprint task list and they're not just co-editing in the UI, that you end up with apps that need to get merged together from a kind of code standpoint after each one has been built for the functionality that dev was working on. And there's now this tool that can go look at the contents of each and merge them together more or less safely. Obviously, you still need to double check that it did it absolutely right, but nice that it is now something you can sort of download a tool to help you get started there. Another fantastic tool that has recently come out is this thing called a Power Platform Inventory Report, and it's way more than just inventory. It not only helps you with inventory of your environments and the various assets, but governance policies and what's turned on and what's not, and recommendations, DLP policies and how those are supposed to be working, settings that are either on or off in various environments, a list of recommendations, all kinds of great stuff. So if you're willing to put that in one of your Code-First tools and run it, it should give you a whole bunch of information that can help along with what you can do in Power Platform Admin Center and what you can do with the alerts that I just talked about. But we're pulling all kinds of interesting things together to help make governance even easier for your admins. This is another site that is just fantastic for people that are making Copilot Studio things and administering and overseeing, but all sorts of different kind of topics in here that you can figure out how you want to do, Intra or Okta SSO, and what are you thinking about for functional testing or load testing and implementation guides, just all kinds of great stuff out here for info. So wanted to put a link to it. Making apps smarter is all about figuring out how to leverage the capabilities of your agent, including the M365 Copilot, right from within your either Canvas apps, which is in preview, or your model-driven apps, which is in general availability. So allowing you to do all that kind of stuff is awesome. And the agent feed for making sure that all the things that those agents are doing, especially in autonomous mode, have a UI to it so you can check up on them and make sure they're not stuck and all those and are still executing and all that kind of stuff. And lots of capabilities to work with it kind of in the reverse also, so that you can be in the agent experience in the more text-based kind of interaction and bring in all of your apps. So you've got, again, that inception type concept to make things work back and forth very, very easily, depending on where you happen to be at any given time. This was a quick LinkedIn post that I just put a link to because I thought it was super awesome that Adi kind of talked about the APIs and the plugin that he built that allows you to run tests, look at the results of those tests, automatically make some changes, push those changes back out. The fact that it got published successfully would kick off the test again and just iterate through this process all automatically if you want to. You can still do all that stuff manually, of course, but a way to automate all of that till you hit some sort of score that you would like, or you tell it to opt out of the loop or something like that. So thought that was super cool. I haven't done enough of this to really run into it, but apparently the out of the box Fabric MCP server within Copilot Studio fails some of the time. And so I thought it was pretty cool that this author just talked about, well, then build one of your own and make sure it uses on behalf of authentication so that it uses the user who's logging in's creds, and query it through the custom server that you're in control of so you can make sure if it starts to fail, you fix it if it needs to be fixed. And this last one is just a fairly recent update that came out yesterday. And Henry goes through both some channel observations with things that work differently in Teams and M365, but the difference between custom agents and declarative agents and sort of how those work. And the big thing is declarative agents are about to become a first-party citizen that you can make from within the Copilot Studio user interface, as well as going to Agent Builder to build a declarative agent that gets published to Copilot, which will give it the ability to make those types of declarative agents that include topics and call agent flows and run through evaluations and some other things. It won't be quite as rich an experience because the declarative framework just doesn't have quite as many options as the regular Copilot Studio framework does. But nice to know that we're going to add some capabilities to use that editing tool to build more sophisticated declarative agents. And then a bunch of good stuff to understand about changes that we've made very recently around pay-as-you-go and the ability to just consume credits from your pool of Copilot credits and have things stop if you want to. Lots of good stuff in this article. So I have gone through all sorts of great stuff on the Power Platform side of things. I'll really quickly just say we've also added one thing to our contact center functionality that's worth paying attention to, and that's that we've given you a framework to understand when a hang-up event happens, whether the user initiates it or whether the customer initiates it or the other end of the call, whatever that is, and to be able to then call whatever you need to because of that event as an action that's going to start happening after the call has hung up that might be super helpful in automating and making things a little bit quicker. So there's how it works and what's new and all kinds of different stuff here in this article. If you are a contact center customer, pay attention to that. And I think I have wrapped through my content, and I'll turn it over to you, Lauren, to run through the things you've gathered.
Really cool stuff, Bart. Thanks for sharing.
There's always more than I expect by the time I've talked through
it. Always. All right, so the first thing I wanted to show here was from our D365 blog. This isn't really a product update, but I wanted to point out that a new Forrester study came out for D365 Business Central. It's worth taking a look at just based off of the different measures that they're looking at. And, you know, the bottom line here is that the modernization of F&O in BC is really establish a foundation for AI-enabled capabilities like Copilot and intelligent agents. So, you know, the modeled ROI here is being driven by consolidation of ERP workloads, standardization of financial workflows, and reduced reconciliation overhead, with AI really becoming viable once clean data, integrated systems, and consistent processes are in place. So there's a link to this study. If you're a BC user, it's worth looking at, you know, exactly how they measured this and how they got into the weeds with this study. Then we have a lot of updates from our release planner as well. Let's see, from Project Ops, the 2026 release wave 1, we've got a bunch of new features. This one here is coming to GA in July, where you can create work orders from project tasks. So this feature really enhances the D365 field service and project ops integration by enabling your project and field teams to create field service work orders directly from project tasks, or linking existing work orders to specific project tasks so users can really have a more clear connection between their planned project scope and their field execution right from the start. So it's great for giving dispatchers or technicians clear context for why and when work should be occurring, helping with reducing ambiguity, helping prevent out of sequence execution, etc. And then next, also coming to GA beginning of July, is tracking real project progress from field execution. So with this feature, when field techs complete work tied to a project task, you can actually see that progress reflected immediately in your project health metrics. And the time flows directly into task level tracking in Project Ops. So tracking things like effort completed, percent complete, estimated completion, and schedule variance, they're all going to stay accurate without manual recognition. So because these calculations can now occur at the leaf task level, their impact is going to roll up automatically to the summary task and the project route. So project managers can really assess things like delivery health, forecast outcomes, and identify risk using those execution metrics grounded in approved field work. Then scrolling down here, coming to GA in September is the ability to calculate revenue recognition for standalone selling price contract lines. So with this, users can set the contract line value on the actual project contract line, and the system can then calculate revenue recognition based on the contract line value amount. So you can actually use that contract value to calculate RevRec, then use billing milestones to invoice the customer. And being able to separate these values will help you recognize revenue based on the effort or standalone selling price. And this approach really aligns better with ASC 606 and IFRS 15 requirements. Then down at the very bottom here, also coming to GA in December, is the ability to support larger invoices in Project Ops with dual write asynchronous integration for customer invoicing. So traditional real-time dual write sync is limited to handling up to about 1,000 invoice lines, which can be a bottleneck for organizations who are managing really large, complex projects. So the async integration between Dataverse and D365 F&O is going to remove this constraint, which allows invoices with thousands of lines to be processed seamlessly. Then we have a lot of other updates here just in terms of dates. There's a ton of features where we now have dates for their announced GA. So feel free to come in here and parse through that as well in terms of what's coming out for Project Ops. Then next, coming to BC, in terms of finance, is a new feature coming to GA in September, which is the ability to enable accelerated depreciation methods for fixed assets. So accelerated depreciation will now be a standard depreciation method in fixed assets, and you can configure those acceleration factors and asset settings directly in your depreciation books. So BC can automatically calculate accelerated amounts, the equivalent linear amounts and the difference between them, and then actually post the values to the appropriate accounts. And then inquiry pages provide better visibility into annual depreciation figures, into variances, into remaining book value, which is going to help with consistent financial tracking and audit transparency. And then coming in terms of reporting and data analysis in BC, coming to GA in May is the use of enhanced and faster reports for analysis of deferrals and trial balances. So built-in deferral report Excel layouts are now going to include subtotals. So it's going to make it easier to review balances, improve transparency, reduce manual spreadsheet work during reconciliation, and your audit processes as well. Several standard finance Excel reports are also going to be running significantly faster. And then in addition, new analysis views on key finance list pages are going to provide better filtering and slicing of ledger and asset activity. And Then in F&O cross app opportunities coming to GA in June 2026 is the ability to build custom scenarios with Archive Framework. So this feature allows customers to implement and run custom archive scenarios that natively leverage the Archive Framework's orchestration and data management capabilities, which is really going to help empower customers to address more unique regulatory, operational, and business-specific data retention needs without waiting for those scenarios to be delivered by Microsoft. So by using the Archive Framework, customers can build their own custom archive solutions that cover custom tables in D365. So it's going to help reduce things like custom engineering effort and accelerate compliance with any sort of local or super specific, industry specific requirements. And custom scenarios can also integrate with existing archive job creation, scheduling, and execution flows, which really help with consistency with first-party archive behavior. And then validation is going to enforce framework standards for your configuration, your execution, and retention policies while providing more flexibility to model customer-specific data domains. And then last, in D365, supply chain is coming to public preview in June. I'm very excited about this as a supply chain girl. Is the ability to gain quality management insights with analytics dashboards. So this feature is going to use business performance analytics to provide out-of-the-box dashboards and KPIs for quality processes. So it's going to aggregate all the quality data into analytics-ready models and present it through interactive dashboards that can help you track things like compliance, what are your defect rates, your process performance. These are all going to be built-in KPIs and insights that are going to support things like your root cause analysis, things like trend monitoring as well, and data-driven decision-making to improve quality outcomes and operational efficiency. So, we've seen a lot of updates with quality in the past year or two, and this is just further strengthening our quality management system in D365. With that, that's all I have for today, Bart. A lot
Yeah,
of good
who doesn't
stuff.
want better quality, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for all the news and updates that you brought. And I hope everyone benefited from today's session. And we'll see us all again in a couple of weeks when we do the next edition with all the new news over the next fortnight. So thanks all.
Fantastic. Bye, Bart. Bye, Max.
Bye.